Let's discuss relational database. Relational database stores data in tables in a column and row structure, so makes it easy to find a data point. For example, we have 11 blue and 1 green ball. If we need to find the green ball in a random setting, it will be difficult to address the position of the ball. Whereas when we organize them in columns and rows, it will be easy to build a logic to find the green ball by calling the relevant column and row IDs. And that's where a relational database helps because the data is stored in a table. In the previous slide, we learned about relational databases, and here we're going to talk about RDBMS. Relational Database Management System is a software system that maintains relational database. Normally, they use a structured query language or SQL to perform this task. RDBMS is a product that presents a view of data as a collection of rows and columns. MySQL is an open-source relational database management system. In simple words, MySQL is a software that uses SQL language to query a relational database. Other examples of RDBMS are Oracle Database and Microsoft SQL Server. Let's discuss the difference between MySQL and SQL. SQL is a query language, whereas MySQL is a software which uses SQL to query a database. Let's have a quick overview of where SQL commands stand in the programming infrastructure. We can divide the programming infrastructure into two parts: front-end and back-end. Front-end is the user interface where the information gets displayed. This is your computer screen. The major languages used on the front-end include JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. Backend is where all the data processing happens. We can split this further into two portions: server and the database. Server is where we use the logical operations, and the major languages which run these logical operations are PHP, JavaScript, Java, and Python. Now, let's get to the most interesting part for this course: the databases. The databases store all the information. SQL, or Structured Query Language, is the language for storing, manipulating, and retrieving this information from a relational database. Let's have an example. You want to find a LinkedIn profile. You are using a Google search engine. You will initiate that request. The request will go to the server. Server will talk to the databases and ask for that information. Databases will provide that information back to server. SQL language can be used for this process. Server will process the information and send it to your display. This is where you will be able to see this information that you initially requested on your computer screen. Because SQL works in the backend and you don't see this procedure, it's very important to understand this process, so you will have the basic understanding of where SQL works in the system. In SQL, create, read, update, and delete are the four basic functions to maintain a database. These four set of functions are called CRUD. I'll walk you through them step by step. Let's start with create. Let's explain our first command in MySQL Workbench. This command is show databases, which will show the list of all existing databases on the server. Now let's go and try this command. Like any other language, programming languages also have their own grammar. This grammar is called syntax. In this course, I show you SQL syntax in a very basic form first on this demo board, and then we will move to SQL Workbench to write real codes. Let's start with our first command, show databases. Type show databases with a semicolon at the end. When we execute this piece of code, all the existing databases on our server will show up. Here in my demo, you can see that on the right side, I have 4 databases on my server. Now, I show you how the same command works on MySQL Workbench. Go to MySQL Workbench. We need to type MySQL Workbench in our search bar. Then double click on the MySQL Workbench icon. This will direct us to welcome to MySQL Workbench webpage. And here we can see the connection that we created in our previous video. We called it SQL tutorial. So if we double click on this connection, it will take us to MySQL graphical interface. Here we're asked to enter the password we set up during the configuration process. So we type it in. This will take us to MySQL Workbench graphical interface. So here you can see on the top that there is a menu bar. For now, we just need to learn how to save a file. Here you can see that I have my SQL file. And if I type in something in here, I can save this file by going into Files and Save a Script. And here I will choose the directory I want to save the file in. The point I want you to know here is that the SQL file format will be saved as .sql. I click on OK, and now I have my file saved. Let's close this file and try to reopen it. Saving a file will allow you to keep your work saved so you can recall it whenever you want to reuse it. If I want to open the same file, I go into File, Open SQL Script, and here I choose the file that I just saved. I click on Open. And you can see there is also a button called Save the Script, which will do exactly the same thing. Another button I want you to remember right now is this Reconnect to the database. So for any reason, if you lose connection with the MySQL server, or if you make any changes in the setup, and then you will have to press on this button to help you reconnect to the server so you can execute those changes. Another part I want you to know is click on this icon, create a new SQL tab for executing new queries. So once I click on this, it will create a new SQL query session where we can write our commands. And on the left-hand side, you can see in the middle, there are 2 major tabs. One is the administration. So this will give us all the options to administer our files. We don't need to worry about this part for now. The second tab is called the Schema. The Schema will give you a list of all available databases in your system. So here I can click on this arrow to expand on the sports shop database that I had created. And you can see that I have access to tables and other options for that. And at the bottom of the page, there is this part called action output. So every time we execute a command, if there is any error, we can see that in the output section. For example, here I type a create table command. And once I execute this, so to execute a command, there's this thunder shape button that once I click on that, it will run my functions or commands. And I can see that it will show me in the output section a message with error code and detailed explanation of what the error was. And another part I want you to know at this moment is that on the top right hand side, we have this option to hide the windows at the left, bottom, or right side. And if we want to show them again, we just click back on them and they will be back. But for now, in the future tutorials, I will close all the windows on the left, right, and bottom side, so there will be less distraction. Now let's go and write our first command. Let's get to the exciting part, writing our first command in MySQL Workbench. So here I will type in show databases. This is the first command we want to run. And this command will show us all available databases in MySQL server. To run this command, I will select this portion, and I can see on top there is the thunder shape button, which is the execute or run button. So once I hit on that, in the output section, which is the bottom part, I can see all my 4 databases that exist in the server. In the next video, we will learn how to create databases and tables. Stay tuned.